The CEO mocked the janitor.
Looks like
"Fly
you'll
this
need those more
helicopter
than
and
I
I'll marry
will.
you." But his true identity left her speechless.
Oops. Looks like you'll
Before we
need those
dive
more
in,
than I.
remember to hit that subscribe button and let me know your city in the comments. Enjoy the story time. Fly this helicopter and I'll marry you. Alina Whitmore's voice dripped with contempt as she gestured toward the Sikorsky S-76 gleaming on the rooftop of Whitmore Aerospace headquarters. The setting sun cast long shadows across the helipad, and 32 senior executives erupted into laughter that echoed off the glass and steel. James Carter froze mid-motion, his mop suspended above the polished marble floor. Water dripped steadily from the worn strings, each drop marking time in the sudden, suffocating silence that followed the laughter. He straightened slowly, vertebra by vertebra, until he stood at his full height, 6 feet of controlled dignity wrapped in a janitor's worn uniform. Alina tossed the helicopter keys. They sailed through the air in a perfect arc, catching the dying sunlight before clattering at James' feet. The metallic sound seemed to reverberate through the entire floor. "Go ahead," she said, her $3,000 suit immaculate, her blonde hair perfectly coiffed. "Pick them up." The laughter peaked again. Phones materialized in manicured hands, red recording lights blinking like predatory eyes. James' hands trembled, barely perceptible, but there nonetheless. He bent, his knees cracking slightly, and retrieved the keys. His fingers closed around the cold metal. "You serious?" His voice was deep, controlled, carrying undertones that none of them recognized. "Of course not." Alina's laugh was crystalline and cruel. "You probably think helicopters run on regular gas from the corner station." She paused for effect, surveying her audience. "Imagine a janitor who can't read warning labels flying a $15 million aircraft. It would be like handing a child a loaded gun." James pocketed the keys, the humiliation settling into his chest like a stone. But a flicker passed through his eyes, something ancient and knowing, something that had seen things Alina Whitmore couldn't imagine in her worst nightmares. When you underestimate someone based on their job title, you might be mocking the very person who will save your life. 6 months earlier, the business world had shattered with the news. Richard Whitmore's private jet had gone down over the Atlantic. No survivors. His daughter Alina inherited a $2 billion aerospace empire at 29, thrust into a world of corporate sharks and military contracts she barely understood. James Carter had been the night janitor at Whitmore Aerospace for 3 years, $15 an hour. He cleaned 15 floors of the gleaming tower that dominated the skyline, his reflection ghosting across windows that looked out over a city he'd once protected from above. Tonight, Alina had stayed late, drowning in contracts she didn't fully comprehend, trying to fill shoes 3 sizes too large. James pushed his cart past her corner office, its door ajar. His eyes, trained by years of spotting threats from 1,000 feet up, snagged on a helicopter maintenance log splayed across her mahogany desk. Flight hours logged at 1,247, but engine runtime showed only 981, a discrepancy that would mean nothing to most people. To James, it screamed danger. "Enjoying the view?" Alina's voice sliced through the silence like a blade. She didn't even look up from her paperwork. "These machines are more complex than anything in your entire neighborhood, I'd imagine." James resumed mopping, the rhythmic swish of water against marble the only sound. "Just doing my job, ma'am." "Your job?" She finally looked up, and her eyes, ice blue, her father's eyes, swept over him with the same attention she might give a piece of furniture. "That helicopter out there has an autopilot system worth more than you'll make in your entire lifetime. But you wouldn't understand any of that, would you? Her perfume, $1.000 per ounce, probably, overpowered even the sharp chemical smell of his cleaning supplies." The door burst open. Michael Brennan, the CFO, entered with the controlled panic of a man drowning on dry land. His salt and pepper hair was disheveled, his tie loosened despite the late hour. His hands shook as he poured himself 3 fingers of whiskey from Richard's, no, Alina's now crystal decanter. Alina, we need to discuss the Airbus deal. 500 million. It has to close on the 15th. His voice carried the edge of desperation. It's arranged, Alina replied, her eyes still tracking James as he worked. My father built this empire from nothing. I won't let it crumble on my watch. Michael glanced at the helicopter visible through the floor-to-ceiling windows, its silhouette sharp against the darkening sky. Something calculating mixed with desperation across his face. Your father was careful about who he trusted. And I'm not. Alina's tone could have frozen mercury. That's not what Michael caught himself, noticing James for the first time. We shouldn't discuss this around staff. James emptied his mop bucket methodically, his face reflected in the polished surface of a mirror, gaunt, tired, older than his 41 years. His hand went to his pocket, retrieving a small orange bottle. Sertraline. 1 pill, dry swallowed, for the nightmares that hadn't stopped in 5 years. Later in the empty boardroom, James noticed something. A red stain near the emergency exit, barely visible in the low light. His heart rate spiked. Aviation hydraulic fluid, Mil H5606. The color was wrong. It had been contaminated, turned that distinctive red that meant the fluid was breaking down, crystallizing. Long night. James turned. Sarah Mitchell stood in the doorway, the exhausted HR manager clutching a confidential folder to her chest like a shield. She'd always been kind to him, one of the few who remembered his name. She glanced back toward Alina's office. She's getting worse, ever since Richard, she trailed off, then seemed to catch herself. I'm sorry, you don't need to hear this. But James had already seen the edge of a document peeking from her folder. Richard Whitmore's last will and testament. From Alina's office, Michael's voice rose. The 15th is non-negotiable. I'll take the helicopter myself if I have to, show them that Whitmore's strength hasn't died with Richard. The maintenance is perfect, Alina said. I checked it myself. Michael went pale. Of course, perfect. Alina's voice suddenly cut through like a whip. Still here, don't you have toilets to clean? James pushed his cart toward the service elevator. His mind cataloged the evidence. Mismatched flight hours, contaminated hydraulic fluid, Michael's tremor, Sarah's hidden documents. The 15th. 5 days away. Something was going to happen and people were going to die. The next morning, Alina addressed 40 senior managers in the main conference room. Sunlight streamed through the windows, catching dust motes in the air. James mopped the periphery, invisible as wallpaper, until Alina's voice suddenly focused on him like a spotlight. Let me demonstrate what happens when we lower our standards. She walked toward him, her heels clicking against the marble with the precision of a metronome. 3 years of pushing a mop through these halls. Tell me, James, have you learned anything about aviation? The managers chuckled, a ripple of sycophantic laughter. James kept mopping, his movements steady. I've learned some things. Like what? Alina grabbed a full coffee cup from an executive's hand and, maintaining eye contact with James, deliberately poured the steaming liquid onto the floor he just cleaned. Brown liquid spread across white marble like a stain on conscience. Clean that up. James set down his mop. That's deliberate destruction of. Clean it up or clear out your locker. Her voice had gone deadly quiet. The room fell silent. You could have heard a pin drop. Phones appeared again, recording. Someone would caption it later. CEO puts janitor in his place. It would get 2 million views. James got on his knees. The sound of his knees hitting marble echoed through the vast room. He began soaking up the coffee with paper towels from his cart, the hot liquid burning his hands. Alina stood over him, a queen surveying a peasant. This is what happens when we don't maintain standards, she announced to the room. This is why Whitmore Aerospace only hires the best, not whatever this is. On the mezzanine above, Michael Brennan watched, his phone pressed to his ear. His voice carried in the acoustics of the space, probably louder than he realized. Yes, the 15th, everything's in place. The hydraulics will fail at altitude. Make it look natural. James heard every word. Sarah Mitchell suddenly pushed through the crowd, her face flushed. She knelt beside James. Let me help. Sarah, don't. Alina's heel landed inches from Sarah's hand, close enough to be a threat, far enough to maintain deniability. He needs to learn his place. Alone. Sarah stood, but as she did, she pressed something into James' palm, a small key. She mouthed 2 words tonight, Richard's office. The crowd dispersed, whispers trailing like smoke. James finished cleaning. Alina returned, surveying his work. Better. And James, that helicopter key you picked up yesterday, keep it. A reminder of everything you'll never be able to do. She walked away laughing, and James stood alone in the empty conference room, the late morning sun streaming through windows 30 floors above the city he'd sworn to protect. He thought about the doctored flight records. The text message Sarah had shown him once. Stop digging or you'll join Richard. He looked out at the helicopter on the roof, its rotors still in the windless morning. In 5 days, Alina Whitmore would die. The woman who despised him, who'd made him grovel. His hand went to his pocket, felt the outline of his old military challenge coin, carried everywhere despite everything. War was coming, and this time he'd be ready. 2 nights before the 15th, James used Sarah's key to slip into Richard's old office. The executive suite was dark, moonlight streaming through the windows, casting everything in shades of blue and silver. He found what he was looking for in a hollowed-out flight manual on the shelf, a flash drive labeled simply insurance. The files opened like Pandora's box, life insurance policies. If Alina died in an aviation accident, Michael Brennan, as interim CEO, would receive a $100 million payout. The policy had been purchased 2 weeks before Richard's jet went down. James heard the elevator chime. He froze. Michael stumbled in, drunk, phone pressed to his ear. I need more time on the $50 million, Michael slurred into the phone. No, please, not my family. My daughter's only 8 years old. I'll do exactly what you want. His voice broke. The hydraulic fluid's been replaced with the compound. It'll crystallize at 10,000 feet. Alina won't suffer. It'll be quick, just like her father. Michael ended the call and walked to the window, staring at the helicopter silhouetted against the night sky. I'm sorry, Richard, he whispered to the ghost of his old friend. They gave me no choice. James waited 30 minutes after Michael left before ascending to the roof. The night air was cold, and the city sprawled below like a circuit board of lights. He opened the helicopter's maintenance panel with hands that knew every bolt and seal. The hydraulic fluid was wrong, viscous, slightly discolored. At altitude, at temperature, it would crystallize, locking the controls. A death sentence at 10,000 feet over open water. He couldn't drain it. Michael would notice immediately. Alina wouldn't believe him if he told her. He was just a janitor. But James had an idea born from 15 years of keeping broken helicopters flying in combat zones. He carefully added a measured amount of standard hydraulic fluid to the contaminated reservoir. Not enough to prevent crystallization entirely, but enough to change when it would happen. Instead of failing at 10,000 feet over the ocean, it would fail around 3,000 feet. Low enough for an emergency auto-rotation landing. If Alina could perform one. If she didn't panic. If the landing zone was clear. So many ifs. In the janitor's closet, James wrote out emergency procedures in an old notebook in his small, precise handwriting. How to recognize hydraulic failure. How to enter auto-rotation. How to flare at the right altitude. How to survive. His phone rang. Unknown number. A voice electronically disguised. You were in Richard's office. Stop now or your medical records go public. PTSD, psychiatric discharge, the incident in Fallujah, everything. James hung up. They knew. They knew about the family he'd accidentally targeted on bad intelligence. They knew why he couldn't fly anymore, why he shook, why the pills. The morning of the 14th, James found Alina reviewing flight plans in her office, her father's old office, trying to wear his crown. "Big day tomorrow," she said without looking up. $500 million. Daddy would be proud. "Ma'am," James said quietly from the doorway. "About the helicopter, maybe have it inspected one more." She laughed, a sound like breaking glass. "The janitor giving me aviation advice. That's precious. Stick to toilets, James. Leave the flying to people with actual brains." Sarah walked past in the hallway, catching James' eye. She mouthed, "I know what you found." James had less than 24 hours to save a woman who despised him. The 15th dawned clear and cold. Alina stood in the lobby at 7 a.m. reviewing last-minute details. Michael hovered near her, sweating despite the air conditioning. "Take off at 8 sharp," Alina said. "The Airbus executives are notoriously punctual." James pushed his cart past, the folded instructions heavy in his pocket. Alina's assistant rushed in with coffee. James, timing it perfectly, accidentally bumped him. The coffee exploded across Alina's expensive flight suit. "You clumsy idiot," Alina screamed, face red. "This suit costs more than you make in 6 months. I have to fly in 20 minutes. "There's a spare suit in your office," Michael offered too quickly. "You're done, fired. Security will escort you out after my flight." 20 minutes. James needed 20 minutes. While Alina changed, James slipped onto the roof. Security was on break. He placed the folded instructions in the pilot's seat. He activated his phone's voice recorder and wedged it under the co-pilot's seat for evidence. Finally, he placed his old military challenge coin on top of the papers. CW3 James Carter, 160th SOAR, Night Stalkers. From the supply closet he heard Michael on his phone. "She's delayed 20 minutes. Yes, the compound should still work. Altitude is altitude. Just get my family to safety afterward." At 8:20, Alina emerged. James watched from a maintenance window as they headed to the roof. Alina climbed into the pilot's seat. Her hand touched the papers, then froze when she saw the challenge coin. She picked it up, reading the inscription, "Night Stalkers, Elite Helicopter Pilots." Confusion crossed her features as she scanned the empty roof. "Everything okay?" Michael called. "Fine, just running through pre-flight." She pocketed both the instructions and the coin. The helicopter lifted off. James' hands shook violently. The memory of Fallujah flooded back, the guilt of the family of 6, the mistaken target. In the operations center, Michael and Sarah watched the flight tracker. 2,500 feet. Controls are getting stiff. Alina's voice crackled over the radio. 2,800 feet. Hydraulic pressure dropping rapidly. I'm losing. The radio cut to static. Michael went white. "No, too low, she's too low. It was supposed to happen at 10,000 over water, quick and clean." He turned and saw James. What did you do?" James said nothing. The altitude reading held at 2,250 feet. She was fighting it. Then Alina's voice returned, steadier. "Tower, this is Whitmore 1. Hydraulic failure in progress. Attempting emergency auto-rotation per emergency procedures." She was reading his instructions. Sarah grabbed Michael's arm. "You killed Richard, and you tried to kill her." "I had no choice," Michael collapsed. 50 million in gambling debts to the Castellano family. They were going to kill Emma, my baby girl. They said they'd make it painless, just an accident. The altitude dropped. 2,000, 1,500 controlled descent. Auto-rotation successful. Emergency landing in Riverside Park. Send medical and fire. Michael buried his face in his hands. "They'll kill her anyway. They'll know I failed." James pulled out his phone. "Colonel Henderson, it's Carter. I need a favor. Witness protection for a family of 3, name of Brennan. In exchange, I have evidence of organized crime, murder conspiracy. Sarah opened her secure files. Richard left instructions. He wrote James' name. Richard hired James 3 years ago specifically to watch over Alina. Alina burst through the doors, alive, hair disheveled. Where is he? She held up the challenge coin. Where's James Carter? Gone, Sarah said. His shift ended. His shift, Alina's voice cracked. He saved my life. These instructions, flare at 40 feet AGL. No janitor knows that terminology. James Carter isn't just a janitor, Sarah said, pulling up files. Chief Warrant Officer 3 James Carter, 160th Special Operations Aviation Regiment, the Night Stalkers. The screen showed a younger James. Distinguished Flying Cross, Purple Heart, 1,500 combat hours. Medically discharged after Fallujah. Alina stared. This decorated warrior had cleaned her toilets. She had made him crawl. Michael, handcuffed now, spoke through tears. The Castellanos owned me. They wanted the contracts. I didn't warn Richard. They had photos of Emma at school. Alina picked up a maintenance report, seeing James' handwriting in the margins. 3 years of silent protection. 3 years, she whispered. He could have told me. Would you have believed him? A janitor accusing your CFO? Sarah asked. The FBI agent interrupted. The hydraulic fluid was analyzed. Someone diluted the sabotaged compound to lower its crystallization point. Instead of failing at 10,000 feet, it failed at 3,000. Whoever modified the sabotage saved your life. Alina closed her eyes. James. We found his phone recording under your co-pilot's seat, the agent continued. Brennan's full confession is time-stamped 2 hours ago. Alina walked to the window. A beat-up Honda Civic was pulling out. James sat behind the wheel, shoulders slumped. Stop him, Alina commanded. Security, stop him at the gate, now. Sarah made the call. James' car halted. Alina grabbed the coin, the instructions, and the key she'd thrown at him. Behind her, Michael's desperate cry, I'm sorry. The elevator crawl was agony, replaying every insult, all while he, a war hero, protected her. She reached the gate, breathless. James sat motionless. Let me go, he said through the window. I'm just a janitor, remember. Get out of the car. Her voice was steel. He emerged slowly in his stained uniform, eyes hollow. You're James Carter, she said, holding the coin. Chief Warrant Officer, Night Stalkers. You have a distinguished flying cross. Past tense, he said. Medically discharged, PTSD, unfit for duty. You saved my life. I delayed your death by 2,000 feet. There's a difference. My father hired you to protect me. Your father hired a janitor. Check the employment records. Stop, her voice cracked. I know everything, Michael confessed. You modified the hydraulics to save me. You made me crawl. James pulled out his phone, showing the video of her humiliation. 2 million views. That's your legacy, Miss Whitmore. I didn't know you were human. You mean you didn't know I was useful? Sarah Mitchell ran up, handing him a folder. James relented. Fallujah, 2018. Bad intelligence. I fired on what I thought was hostile. It was a family of 6. I see their faces every night. That's why I can't fly, why I shake. You were following orders. I was the pilot, my finger on the trigger. He turned back to his car. Michael killed my father, and you knew. Suspected. Tuesday, I tried to tell you. You said to stick to toilets. Wednesday, the coffee incident. When exactly should I have mentioned your CFO was planning murder? Michael's scream echoed from the car park. The Castellanos will come for all of you. James, you signed your death warrant. Actually, James pulled out a second phone. I called someone else first. A black SUV pulled up. A man with a military bearing stepped out. Carter, your testimony just handed us the biggest organized crime bust in a decade. Brennan's family is safe. Alina knelt on the concrete in front of the cameras. I'm sorry, not because you're a hero, because I treated you as less than human. Get up, James' voice was tired. Kneeling doesn't fix anything, it's just another performance. Then what does? Real change, not gestures. He handed back the key. Start by flying your own helicopter. Your father didn't hire me to save you. He hired me to watch you learn to save yourself. He got back in his car. You're still fired, right? Definitely fired. 3 days later, every employee gathered. Alina stood at the podium. I'm not here to make excuses. I'm here to make changes. James stood in the back. Effective immediately, Whitmore Aerospace's hiring practices change. We've ignored veterans, minorities, anyone without the right pedigree. We've been fools. She announced. Custodial staff would receive full benefits, $30 an hour, and respect. Next, the Richard Whitmore Foundation. Free flight training for veterans with PTSD. James Carter, Alina said, would you come forward? He walked through the crowd. Alina handed him an envelope. Your final paycheck, plus 3 years of combat pay my father was funneling to you. About $300,000. I don't want it. She turned to the crowd. Mr. Carter is fired from his custodial position because I'm offering him a new one, Chief of Flight Safety and Security. $175,000 salary, full benefits, reporting directly to me. James shook his head. I can't fly anymore. You don't need to fly. You need to teach, train, and ensure every aircraft is safe. Your PTSD makes you qualified, not weak. You see threats others miss. Sarah presented a folder. The Pentagon specifically requested you. They want someone they trust overseeing their contracts. One condition, James said. The foundation, I run it. Deal, they shook. James pulled out his pill bottle. This is sertraline. I take it every day for PTSD. If that makes you uncomfortable, speak now. Silence, then an engineer stood. Prozac for anxiety. Others followed, confessing their struggles. Jesus, Alina whispered. Maybe stop judging by appearances, James said. She cleared her throat. Whitmore Aerospace will now cover all mental health treatment. No caps, no questions, no stigma. One more thing, James said. That video of me on my knees has 2 million views. We should do a follow-up, show them the truth. That could destroy our stock price. Or it could show the world that Whitmore Aerospace faces truth, owns mistakes, and protects its people. Alina smiled. We tell the truth. 6 months later, the rooftop helipad. James ran pre-flight checks with 12 veterans, the first graduates of the Whitmore Foundation. Alina approached in a flight suit. She was taking lessons from James. Ready for your check ride? He asked. Born ready, her hands trembled. Rule number 1. Fear keeps you alive, panic gets you killed. Rule number 2. Trust the aircraft, trust the training, trust yourself. They lifted off. At 3,000 feet, Alina spoke over the intercom. That day, when I poured the coffee, I saw something in your eyes, pity. I did pity you, Alina. You were drowning and taking everyone down with you. You saved someone who didn't deserve saving. Everyone deserves saving, Alina, even the ones who make you crawl, especially them. She executed a perfect turn. I love you, she said simply, not romantically, but the way you love someone who shows you who you really are. Hydraulic pressure is good, you're doing great. Yeah, me too. She landed textbook perfect. As the rotors wound down, he unbuckled. That first day, if I'd known who you were, would you have done exactly the same thing? Yes, because knowing changed you, but it didn't change what needed to happen. That version of you was necessary to create this version. The veterans surrounded them. For the first time since Fallujah, James felt peace. 1 year later, the memorial service for Richard Whitmore, James stood at the podium. Richard Whitmore hired a janitor, James began. But he saw a soldier. He knew his daughter would need protection, not from outside threats, but from becoming the kind of person who measured human worth by job titles. Elena sat in the front row. We all wear masks, James continued. I hid behind a mop. Elena hid behind cruelty, but truth has a way of surfacing. I quit on myself for 5 years until a narcissistic CEO threw helicopter keys at me and accidentally forced me to remember who I was. He pocketed the challenge coin. Here, what I've learned. Everyone's fighting something invisible. The veteran bagging your groceries might have saved 50 lives in combat. The quiet person in the corner might be the strongest person you'll ever meet. Elena stood beside him. So look closer. Look beyond uniforms, titles, skin color, see the human being. James nodded. That's all, just see the human. As they walked down, Elena whispered, "Thank you for seeing the human in me when I couldn't see it in myself." He gave a small salute. "Just doing my job, ma'am."